Welcome to Pure Intuitive Talk with me, Trish Smith. I'm a multi-dimensional channeler sharing my gift to assist others to connect and work with their whole being, helping bring them into a beautiful way of high-frequency living. Immerse yourself in an hour of nourishment that feeds your spiritual journey and invites you to embrace your empowered soul. You'll feel armed with new understandings for how to shift from pain to love as we explore topics from shamanic sound healing to gut health. Are you ready to take accountability for the impact that we have on the world around us and learn new tools and techniques to feel whole again? Of course you are, and you're in the right place. Pure Intuitive Talk starts now. Hey everybody, welcome to Pure Intuitive Talk. I'm your host, Trish Smith, and you're listening to Transformation Talk Radio. Today, I'm going to be having a special guest, Steve Kumerow, and he's here to tell us about this huge transformation that he has been through physically, mentally, and spiritually over the last couple of years. Steve is an old friend of mine. I've known him since he was 16 years old, and I recently learned through Facebook of the major changes that he made in his life and his lifestyle. And I was just so blown away and so impressed by his determination. I had to reach out to him and say, wow, man, I can't even believe it. Like, you are amazing. Like, so welcome, Steve. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Trish. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So a little backstory. You and I met when you were 16 years old.
Yep.
Is that correct?
We lived across the street from each other.
We were neighbors for 12 years. I am in love with your family, always have been. You guys are just some of my favorite people. Sorry, I'll get all emotional. I just adore your family so much, as you know.
Likewise.
So yeah, when was it? Maybe a month ago, all of a sudden you popped back up on Facebook saying, here I am. Sorry, I disappeared from Facebook for a little bit, everybody, but I've been through this transformation. I've lost over 400 pounds in the last 2 years. And my mind, the way my mind works is, okay, wow, like that's huge. That's powerful. That takes so much soul work. And so it's not about the weight. And I knew that. And so we had a brief conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I was just elated by all of the spiritual teachings that you were bringing to me and your perspective. And I was just so in love with your mindset. So I wanted to have you share that with people because it's so beautiful.
Thank you so much.
And I'm so impressed by it. So do you mind starting with kind of how it started? I remember you were telling me about you ended up in the hospital and near death.
Yeah. Going back about 2.5 years ago. Before that, I ended up my health got really out of hand. I was having some heart issues, which made me start putting on a bunch of weight, a lot more weight. I was already very overweight. But it just kind of turned into a snowball effect, and it just got worse and worse. And I blew up to about 650 pounds at my worst. My legs were weeping. They were turning colors.
Wow.
Almost fell off. I could walk maybe from the couch to the bathroom without having to sit down. I could barely move. And then one day I wasn't feeling very good, and I had my wife take me to the hospital, and they were checking me out. And while I was in the ER, about an hour after I got there, I went unconscious, and I woke up about a day and a half later in the ICU. My wife thought that she was going to lose me. My kids were scared to death, and I woke up with all kind of machines on me, and they told me that I was in really bad shape, and it was an eye-opening experience. It scared me to death, scared everyone to death, and I realized right there that I had to make some changes, a lot of changes. I didn't change everything about my life.
And I remember when we spoke on the phone a couple of weeks ago, you explaining to me that, you were saying, to your family, I'm going to make these changes, and their response was, well, you've said that before.
Yeah, I've said that so many times.
I mean, we all have
I've
in for different circumstances, right?
yeah, I've been overweight my entire life. Basically, I got into exercise when I was in high school. I played football, and that was like a glimpse of me finding the real me. But as soon as that ended, real life took over, and I kind of went back to my old habits and my old things. And um, yeah, I always told my wife and my family, I know I'm unhealthy and I know I'm overweight, and I'm making a change. I always say I'm making changes, and then I never really believed it myself. I would always say it, but I never really believed it until this time. When I got out of the hospital, got back home, they got me stable, and then I invited my parents over for dinner, and I had everybody at the table, and I'm just like, hey, I know I've said this a billion times, but I actually mean it this time. This is for real. I'm changing. I'm changing everything, and I'm gonna succeed. I'm gonna do well. And I'm sure everybody would understand. Oh, okay, this is Steve again saying he's gonna make some changes. Okay, but nobody really believed it until I actually did.
And you weren't messing around, man.
No, no, it was do or die time. It was,
Yeah.
if I didn't, I wasn't gonna be here much longer. I almost died already. I had to make some big changes.
Hmm. And your family is so beautiful. I mean, I've always told your mom, I'm like, you have like the most incredible daughter-in-law. And now I have a daughter-in-law who I adore, but 15 years ago, I mean, how long you guys have been together since you were 18 years old?
Yeah, we got together at 18, right out of high school. We got married at 19. We've been married over 20 years now. I think we're on 21 years,
Wow.
and
Mhm.
we've got two kids. They're pretty much grown up.
Yeah.
They're turning 21 and 18 this year. So yeah, they've kind of grown up with me, kind of just seeing me go downhill their entire life, and finally now I actually kind of get to make it up to them.
Hmm.
So that's been exciting and nice.
So when you were in the hospital, and
Hmm.
I remember you saying that they really thought you were going to die, right? So was there a moment where you guys were saying goodbyes and
No, because I didn't really know what was going on, and then I went
um,
unconscious. So it was kind of out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting it. I was just feeling tired, not feeling too good, and then I just passed out. And
mm,
then and then I woke up a couple days later, different room, um, totally different people. It was the middle of the night, so my wife actually had to come back when I woke up, and then she explained to me what had happened, and that she was deathly afraid. She a little bit before that, they could tell that my vitals were kind of coming back. I didn't have enough oxygen in my blood to keep me awake, is what the problem was. So as
oh,
they had me hooked up to things, they could see that I was going to be okay. I just, I had to wake up.
yeah,
So we didn't really have that moment of saying goodbye or anything like that, which
good,
I don't
yeah.
know yeah,
There's that blessing, right? But for poor
yeah.
Deanna, feeling like she was going to lose you during those
Hmm.
couple of days, like you said, would be absolutely terrifying because you're such a good husband. You're such a good family man. I mean, not that it's, a woman in other circumstances wouldn't be terrified to lose their husband, but you've been such a good husband and good father. I mean, it just feels like that would be even harder for a woman to lose sitting at a bedside like that. So,
Yeah, she was devastated. That is for sure. And I regret everything I'd done up until that point every single day, because I had to make her go through that. And that, I couldn't imagine having to go through something like that. It'd be horrible. Uh, but that's what a lifetime of not knowing that your choices made an impact. A
yeah,
lifetime of not having that self love, and not really understanding the effect that I could make on myself.
yeah, yeah.
It
It's
can get you to that
interesting.
point.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you and I were talking on the phone, you had mentioned like the weight being a symptom of
Mm-hmm.
your spiritual unwellness.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I understand from the outside looking in, it's different. Myself, as you know, I have PTSD and I've suffered from depression and panic attacks and whatnot. And from the outside looking in, people look at me and think, oh, she's got it all together, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they don't understand like our closet stories, right? Like I've told people
Yeah.
before, they think, oh, you're doing so well, you're so happy. And most of the time I am doing very well. But when that
Mm-hmm.
panic attack hits and I'm crying on the floor in my closet, I wish I
Mm-hmm.
was normal and my husband finds me in the closet crying. It's,
Yeah.
people, we don't typically register when we're spending time with people, what their closet story looks like, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so for you, that was, it was eating and eating and eating. You had mentioned it was like an addiction. The food was an addiction.
I didn't realize until I started working through it that I did have a severe addiction to food.
Yeah,
And now looking back on and what I've learned since then, that kind of addiction is just as bad as hard drugs or
yeah,
any other kind of addiction, except food is acceptable in society.
right. That
You
makes sense.
know, you're not going to go out in public and shoot heroin, or do hard drugs in front of people, but you'll go out and have a giant hamburger in front of people because that's acceptable.
Yeah,
So in a way, it's even harder because it's something that everybody does.
true.
But when it's an addiction,
Yeah.
you do it to the extreme to where it kills you.
Yeah. And we enjoy eating, like we were talking
Yeah.
about, like gathering and food, and it's
Hmm.
it's a very enjoyable pastime for
Yeah.
everybody for occasions and holidays.
Yeah.
And it's something that we look at as enjoyable, and we forget that, yeah, it can become an addiction. I myself was addicted to sugar, and I
Hmm.
was diagnosed pre-diabetic, maybe 8, 9 years ago. And
Hmm.
I had to decide whether or not I wanted to stab myself with needles or quit sugar. And so I
Yeah.
chose to quit sugar. And I've always been so thin. When I told people, I mean, I literally couldn't gain weight. I had the opposite
Hmm.
problem. And so when I told people I was diagnosed pre-diabetic, they couldn't understand. They didn't believe it.
Right.
But you're so
Right.
thin. Yeah, well, I eat way too much sugar, and
Yeah.
my body was still suffering, my
Hmm.
pancreas and all that other stuff. So I'm sure over the last couple of years you've learned a lot, like I have, about how our body functions, which they don't teach
Yep.
us.
Absolutely. In my family culture growing up, we food was the way to show love. Food was the way to have comfort. The more, the better. And everyone kind of knew that about our families. Like, oh, you go to the Kumerow's house and you get all this great food.
Yeah, you guys
And
fed me
and
well many times.
oh, yeah, so many people, yeah, and everyone kind of knew that about my family, and it's but when you take a minute and realize that that's not normal. It's not normal to put that kind of importance on food.
Yeah,
Um, and when you see other people that live healthy lifestyles, it's nowhere close to what I grew up understanding, thinking what was normal.
right. Yeah, I know. And what is normal is the question today, right?
Yeah.
And typically what's normal is not healthy, but we've got to
Yeah.
cut to a break in a minute, so we'll go ahead, we'll
Okay.
take a break, and I'd love to dive back into that when we get back from our break. So thank you everybody for hanging out with us. We're going to take a minute break. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio. I'm your host, Trish Smith of Pure Intuitive Talk. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Pure Intuitive Talk with your host, Trish Smith, and we're on Transformation Talk Radio. Try to say that 3 times. Anyways, we've got Steve Kumerow, a good old friend of mine, here with us today, and we're talking about a transformation that he made in the last couple of years that was not just physical, but also mental, mindset, and spiritual. So thank you, Steve, for being here. And we were talking before we went to break about food and your relationship with food and the way you grew up with food being something that we gathered around and showed love. And that's how we did that. And my grandma was the same. My grandma showed love with food and she cooked really well and we all enjoyed it. And my grandpa was diabetic because she loved him so much with the food. And we were just discussing about how your family would stoke everybody on food. And I was the recipient of that many times, enjoying the love of the food from your family and the love. There's a lot of love and laughter in your family. And so I myself have been spoiled by that. So I appreciate if you grew up in a household where people cooked and cooked and cooked and the food was good and you were enjoying yourselves around the table. Why wouldn't you end up in your shoes?
Right.
Only
Right.
makes
Well, and
perfect sense.
between that and really not having a grasp of my own power to control my life, to kind of take the path of least resistance, which at that time was the food. It's an immediate dopamine. It's an immediate, it makes you feel better,
And they
you
don't
know?
teach us about our body and our health and what we're doing to our bodies. It's so
Hmm.
unfortunate. I know you've learned as well as I have the importance of nutrition. And we don't learn
Hmm.
those things. We don't know. We don't understand what we're doing to our bodies when we're doing those things,
Yeah.
unfortunately, until someone says, hey, you're pre-diabetic. We're going to send you to the glucose doctor, or until you're lying in a hospital, right?
Yeah. 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 It's very true. It's very, very true. And once, so yeah, so I had the surgery. It was kind of my last ditch effort to save my life. It had a little bit of a waiting list. I did the waiting list. I lost a little bit of weight before that, and then I ended up having the surgery on my birthday 2 years ago, which I kind of look at as a rebirth. It's a little symbolic
Totally.
thing for me, coming from the ashes, and it started off as just I need to lose some weight. It's kind of like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can't really deal with deal with one aspect of healing until you have your base needs. And my
Yep.
base needs at that time was living. So I had the surgery, lost a little bit of weight, and then got to a point where I was okay. I was alive. I was feeling all right. I was still very overweight. But then I realized, like, if I want to really take advantage of this fully, I need to heal every part of me. It's not just the weight. The weight is just something that came from these scars, you know. Um, and I realized, like, if I'm gonna really succeed, I need to change my mind frame, change the way I think about things, change my habits, or else it's just gonna come back, or it's just I'm gonna be miserable in a different way.
True.
I know other people that have had the surgery and didn't do anything to change their mind, didn't do anything to change their lifestyle, and things just continue the way they are.
Yeah.
So I jumped into, I found a great therapist, some healing people, started working out, started going to the gym, and really everything kind of starts coming together. Doing reading and learning and all kinds of great stuff.
Well, and I know too, you're an intelligent man, you
Thank
know.
you.
And so I would imagine that anything you pour yourself into, you are a learning. I always tell people, I like to consider myself a learning animal. So when I call you a learning animal, please don't take offense.
Yeah.
Please don't
No,
take offense.
no, no,
um,
that's great.
okay. But um, but I know that for you, being an intelligent man and knowing since you were 16 years old and watching you grow over the years, you do make wise choices. And so I would only imagine that Steve Kumerow diving into, I'm going to live a healthy lifestyle, would be all in.
Yeah. When you start to realize what things make you feel good, you want to just keep doing them. You
Fair.
know,
Yeah.
when you start to realize, hey, when I learn, when I work on my self-care, my self-love, when I take care of myself, I feel good. I feel energy. I feel endorphins, and then once those start to snowball and you start feeling the effects of them, you want to do them as much as possible. It's why slow down when your momentum is making you feel so good.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and
and
it
I know
you just
you've
kind of.
learned a lot. I remember, I love what you said. It just sticks in my mind so well. The weight was a symptom of your spiritual unwellness. So how did
Hmm.
you come about learning that particularly?
So I grew up, uh, I mean, a big chunk of my life in, organized religion. Um, when you're looking at your spirituality as going to a building or talking to a person or looking for your power from some outside source, like
Hmm.
read and pray and things will come to you. Things will get better, so you're always waiting for something. You're waiting for someone to come help you or some entity to fix your situation. There's no self empowerment there. And I started reading things and learning things, and I've come to realize that each and every one of us, we're a universe in ourselves, and we're all connected on this earth, and we're all part of the earth, and we're all cells and atoms and molecules and all these things, and we have power to affect everything in our life and our body. And when you realize that every single choice you make accumulates, and there's compound interest there. So instead of looking outward for power, when you start to look within your own self for power, for that strength, you realize how powerful and how much you can actually do for yourself.
And you said you had an excellent therapist. And I remember when we were talking, you said you had also been doing Reiki. You found a Reiki practitioner.
Yes, I did, and that was a big step too. When you learn that the energies in your body, the way that your different chakras work, and the energies in your body, they affect your organs, and they affect your physical health and your spiritual health are connected. And when you have balanced out your physical or your spiritual health, I'm sorry, when you balance out that spiritual health, and you realize where you come from, and you realize who you are, and you start to it all kind of comes together. um
Absolutely.
when, when your energies in your body are working correctly, your body starts working correctly.
Absolutely.
And
There's so much healing there.
yeah, physical, spiritual, mental healing is all connected in one. And that's definitely something I've learned through this process.
Absolutely. In shamanic practices too, we also embody the knowledge that our spiritual unwellness creates our physical unwellness.
Hmm.
Um, so it's funny to me, like we were talking about self-development and self-love and self-care. And for myself, the way I kind of view things, like with religious backgrounds, it's like I like all of the teachers. Like I
Hmm.
love like Jesus came to show us how to take care of each other and love one another. And then it
Hmm.
feels to me like Buddha came and he was teaching us how to go within and how to
Hmm.
find that inner power and that inner self-love. And so for myself personally, I enjoy teachings from different religions and different
Hmm.
teachers simply for that reason, is because I want to be able to take the knowledge from all of it so that I myself can do my best to
Yeah.
encompass all of the teachings and love others and care for myself and have that romance, that divine romance with the world around me, with God within me,
Hmm.
all of it. So having
Yeah.
grown up with a religious background and then finding a different kind of spiritual path than you were grown up with, do you find yourself maybe appreciating the same? Like you kind of get to have all of it now?
Yeah, when you kind of look at all the different teachings from all these different religions around the world, they're it's amazing how similar they all are.
Right.
It's amazing, these teachings that can make you happy and healthy, they're universal,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And when you think about it, religions come from all different cultures all over the world, and all these religions, back in the day, they didn't have communication with each other. They didn't have the internet. And
True.
we all have a need to understand our origin. We all have a need to understand where we came from. And so all these different religions from around the world basically are people trying to do that. People trying to understand their origin, where, who they are, where they're from. And kind of something that I've come to realize is we are a product of where we're born, who we're born to, and what we're taught.
Totally.
We're taught everything we know as kids and as growing up is things that we're taught from other people. When we finally realize that if we can unlearn things, some of those things are great and some of those things are damaging. But if we can unlearn everything, we can relearn what actually is important and special to us. We can relearn, what we truly believe, and how we, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. It's almost like a reframing, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
Our early childhood programming, when that was taught to us, those values were important to the people that were passing them on to us.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we make our way in the world as adults and as a person, as a spirit, maybe our values are a little different, maybe
Mm-hmm.
because of the times, things have changed so much. But we have to decide, like, well, what is our path? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
like we all value family, right? But how
Mm-hmm.
do we spend our time with our family might be a different way than our parents. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
finding the paths that work for us. And like you said, unlearning that early childhood programming and then relearning, like, well, what do I want my life to look like? And I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
path that we all go on. And some people grow up, like in my family, there was daily drinking, and my parents weren't terrible alcoholics, but they were daily drinkers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were people that would drink and they'd have fun.
Yeah.
So I never viewed it as a bad thing,
Mm-hmm.
because it was like, well, my parents have beers or have a few beers and they have a good time. Like, so if they were
Yeah.
getting drunk and abusing me, I might have viewed alcoholism differently. But
Yeah.
because they were daily drinkers, but they were having a good time, I didn't really consider it a problem. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was also a daily drinker until I was 30 years old. And
Mm.
like you said, it's like that was the symptom,
Yeah.
right? And the underlying root cause was my spirituality needing the crystal clear clarity of not needing to have that alcohol to numb the pain, right?
Right. Right.
So
You're getting that comfort from an outside source that was the norm for you growing up.
yeah, yeah,
So
it
yeah,
was
I
normal.
completely understand that.
Yeah, when I was around people that didn't drink every day, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. It's just so fascinating how we're raised and what we think is normal, and nothing's really normal, right? I mean, everything's
Yeah.
normal, nothing's normal. I think it's 85%
Yeah.
of families are dysfunctional. So
Yeah.
technically, it's normal to grow up in a dysfunctional family, and it's honestly unusual to grow up in a healthy family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, really, so we're all just
Yeah.
finding our way, I guess.
Yeah. And
But
we're
yeah,
all products of many generations of teachings and many generations of understandings. And at some point there has to be a break in that cycle of some of the things that are destructive.
yeah,
you know
yeah,
I've had to go back and talk to my kids and be like, hey, I know that we've taught you guys these things growing up, and these are the examples that we've set. I'm a different person now. I think differently now, and I want to be here to apologize to you, you know, for the programming that I've done to you, just like we're all programmed with stuff.
yeah.
And you need to know this so that you can break that cycle and really figure out life for yourself.
Amen.
And
We
here's what I've learned. And sorry.
Yeah. Well, we have to go to a break. So I don't want you to lose that thought though. So I want
Yeah.
you to finish and explaining that, because you're absolutely right. We do have
Hmm.
to go to a break, so we'll take a minute. Thank you for listening to Transformation Talk Radio. I'm Trish Smith, your host of Pure Intuitive Talk. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Pure Intuitive Talk. I'm your host, Trish Smith, and you are connected to the Transformation Talk Radio. Here with me today, I have a good old friend of mine, Steve Kumerow, and we're talking about transformation as a whole. I mean, this guy made a transformation not only physically, but mentally and spiritually all over the last couple of years, literally talking to a different person now than we would have been talking to 3 years ago. I mean, your entire mindset, your spiritual path, and your physical being are all poof, brand new. Like you said, you had a rebirth.
Yeah, literally, yes. Yes.
And before we went to break, we were talking about programming, and you
Yeah,
were in the middle of a thought, and I didn't want to interrupt you. So do you mind continuing where we left off?
absolutely. Yeah. So as I was kind of saying, I've had to go back and talk to my kids, about, these were things that were taught to me, that were taught to my parents by their parents, that were probably taught to their parents by their parents, you know,
Right,
and
right.
and 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 while so many family learnings and traditions and stuff are beautiful things, there are some that are just destructive. There are some that are hurting us physically, hurting us spiritually. There are some mind frames and thought processes that just need to that cycle needs to break. And
Yep.
if we can break that now with our kids generation, hopefully that will translate into their kids, and so on and so forth, and create generations of healing rather than generations of of spiritual and physical trauma.
Yeah. Amen. And I liked what you were saying before we went to break about apologizing to your children. I myself
Mm-hmm,
have done the same. I remember even when they were younger, after being attacked and kidnapped, and I had PTSD and I didn't know it yet, and I was just lashing out. I mean, I was
mm-hmm,
having PTSD episodes and I didn't understand what they were, and I would apologize to them. And even
mm-hmm.
throughout their growing up, and even recently, I'll apologize. And I think that was something that the generations behind us didn't really do a lot of.
No.
It was more like, well, this is the way it is, you know? And so for myself, I've made sure that I take accountability with my actions, and especially with my children. And even when they were younger, telling them, I'm sorry, mom was snappy. I'm having a hard day. It wasn't you. Because I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that they were able to at least have,
Yeah.
hey, I'm having a hard time. I'm suffering. There were times, don't get me wrong, children, they're a little wild, right? There were times where I had to get after them, and that was them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there were also times where I was just cranky and I was having a hard
Mm-hmm.
time and I wasn't my best self. And so I made sure to apologize to them and give that to them so that hopefully they knew, okay, and they could differentiate between them needing to correct their behavior, and that's on mom. It's not me,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
I, th- I I think one of the biggest gifts we can give to our kids is coming back and apologizing for things that we've realized that we've messed up on.
yeah, I couldn't agree
You
more.
know, and that they can take that, like, if what I've gone through and my learnings that I'm learning for myself, if I can pass that on to them so that nobody in my family has to go through the same thing, then it's
Yeah,
worth it.
amen. There you are, doing
Like,
the work.
look where I was. Look, I'm so sorry that you had to have that as your dad, for this chunk of your life. I'm sorry that I wasn't that person you needed to be, but I am now.
Yeah,
And hopefully that can create, because I know that me being in that position created some scars for them.
true.
And
Yeah,
and 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 that's a big motivation I have, is to heal some of those scars, and hopefully that won't continue.
absolutely. Well, and modeling, I think, for our children, is so much more powerful than lip service.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but in my life, a lot of elders were giving a lot of lip service. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember picking and choosing pretty wisely for my age when I was younger, people that were modeling behaviors and lifestyles that I wanted to have. And
Mm-hmm.
so I remember looking to those elders and trying to gain wisdom from them, because really, like, it's where the action is. So if I
Yeah.
have someone rolling around through my life like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, and meanwhile they're living an unhealthy lifestyle, to me, I'm really honestly just not even listening, taking it in, because I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, well, you're kind of contradicting,
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so modeling that, like you have modeled this transformation for your children.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's
I'm
huge. Like
trying to,
but
you
you're
know,
doing it. You're doing it.
thank you. And none of us are perfect. I make mistakes. I still have old, thought processes and stuff creep in sometimes, and we all do because we're humans.
Yeah.
But, if we can keep that on the top of our head, this is something that I've also learned is, when you see somebody that's really good at something that you want to be good at, or when someone's in a position in their life that you admire, do the things that those people do. Because
Absolutely.
obviously, like you look at the famous athletes and singers and all these people that are the top of their game. They didn't just get that way. They got that way
Right.
because they have a lifetime of dedication and a lifetime of compound interest, and of building on those skills and just continually doing those actions that got them to that place.
Are you
So
able to recognize that you are now one of those people? I mean, you're talking about dedication and you're talking about action, and
yeah,
you are that. I mean, do you
i'm
recognize
i'm
that?
I'm starting to. It's kind of a weird thing because it's nowhere where I've ever been in my life before. But if you really think about it, like, we're all perfect. Everyone is perfect. We're all born the same, but it's what we do with it. It's the choices that we make. It's, all the little minuscule choices that we make throughout our life. They compound and they build, and any of us are capable to be a professional athlete if we wanted to. If we did the same things that those people did through their whole life, we would be there.
Yeah, hard work.
You look
Yep.
at, back in the day, kind of looking back, being like, oh yeah, success is for other people. Success is for people that are smarter or stronger or better at these things than I am. But really, those people are better at those things because they put in the effort. They practice. They study. They learn. They exercise. They do whatever that thing is that makes them a professional.
Sure. And then we're looking at the
But
payoff, right? We're looking at the payoff like, oh wow,
yeah,
they're so lucky. When it's like they worked really
yeah.
hard to get where they're at.
Well, yeah, we look at them with jealousy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, must be nice. No, they worked their tail off to get them to that point.
Yeah.
So when you can realize that, you kind of look at things in a different way, and you're like, I admire that. I want to be that way. So I'm going to do the stuff that you do, because I want to be like that. I want my life
Amen.
to be. I want to be healthy. I want to be happy. I want to be strong. I want to be whatever.
So how do you feel about, because and for myself, we were talking about like the unwellness of our spirituality, and that goes along with having that determination, right? So
Hmm.
maybe to that spiritual wellness helps us lead ourselves on a path of determination, right?
Hmm.
And in our culture, it feels to me like as an American society that there's so much spiritual unwellness going
Hmm.
on that I think there's a like the majority of people are sitting in that mindset that you mentioned where it's must be nice,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So in my personal opinion, I believe that our country is spiritually unwell as a collective.
Hmm.
And so it just feels like stories like yours and stories like mine, where we've decided to do that inner work and to go deep and to look at ourselves and to look in that mirror and go, what am I doing here? What am I doing with
Hmm.
myself? Where are my faults? Where can I improve? And taking the time and putting the effort to do that work. I'm hoping even by us having this conversation today to inspire others to do the same so that as a
Hmm.
collective, we can heal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you're talking about inspiring others, because when I was at my worst, when I was feeling hopeless and depressed and like I couldn't move, I couldn't leave my house, and I didn't feel like I could do anything when I didn't have that power. I felt like nobody else in my life understood that. I felt, because really, to be 650 pounds, It's very rare. Not many people get
True.
to that point in their life. So when I was at that point, I'm like, nobody understands what it feels like to be me. Nobody understands that.
Right.
So I found that show, My 600 Pound Life, and I started watching that, and I'm like, oh my goodness, these other people, there's other people like me out there, and some of these people are succeeding, and some of these people are not, even though they had the surgery. That's kind of what inspired me to do that. But just seeing that there were other people like me out there gave me a little bit of like hope. Like, okay, I can come back from this, because the reason you never see anybody that big is because they don't live.
Right.
Most people die before they get that big.
Or like you were talking about before, they're hiding, right? They're not coming out of the house because with
Mm-hmm.
our symptoms, we become, riddled with guilt and shame. And
Mm-hmm.
myself as well, when I had PTSD so bad, I mean, I still have PTSD, unfortunately, but when it was, when I didn't have the control over it that I have now, or at least over my behavior, um, I didn't want to go out in public and be the hot mess. It was
Yeah.
embarrassing, and I would sometimes lash out in public a little bit, or I would start to kind of lose it, and it made me not want
Mm-hmm.
to be out in public. So I think, like we were talking about earlier, that's a part of it too. At that weight, you don't want to go out in public because you don't want to face the public.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
It's
know?
you're embarrassed. You're embarrassed. You're uncomfortable. When you go in public and you can't sit on most of the seats, or when you can't fit into a booth at a restaurant, or when you can't do most of the things out there for normal people, and people are looking at you, you don't want to go out. So really, like, a lot of people in my life don't even realize the situation I was in because they didn't see me, because I wasn't talking to
Right.
them about it.
Yeah. It's very isolating. And
Yeah.
isolation feels super lonely. And I don't know about
Hmm.
you, but because of my PTSD and feeling the same way that you felt, that nobody understands, because it's also rare to have the PTSD like I have. It's typical for combat veterans and people of, severe traumas, but it's only 6.7% of Americans that suffer with the PTSD. So,
Wow.
so most people don't understand, like you said, and then it starts to become lonely, and it does start to feel like nobody understands. And when I've sat with that, I started wondering, okay, if I feel like nobody understands what it's like for me to live my life with my PTSD and my functional neurological disorder and my ADHD, I mean, I got D's for days. I got disorders. I got D's for days. I got this disorder, that disorder.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on in my brain. I think there's like squirrels running around in there. It's fine. But I started wondering, how many people feel like that, right? Because you and I are
Yeah.
having this conversation, and there's been times where we're sitting there going, nobody understands.
Hmm.
So I can only imagine that every other person on this planet has had those same thoughts and feelings. Like, nobody understands. And we've all sat in those pits of despair and loneliness feeling that way.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
it's very true. It's very true. And when you feel that loneliness and depression and despair, it snowballs and it makes you worse.
yeah. Isn't
When
that
you when you when
fun?
you Yeah, yeah, and
So good.
until something has to break, you hit that rock bottom, or you do that
Yeah.
thing that starts to bring you back. But it's a really scary uh downward spiral.
And it's a very important place to be, I think, too, in my personal opinion. We have 1 minute left, so we're gonna have to cut to break. But when we get back, let's talk about that. Let's talk about like that rock bottom, because that's the place I think where we get to the bottom of the pool, where we've sunk all the way down and we're at the
Hmm.
bottom of the pool, and then we launch ourselves up from there, right? That
Hmm.
rock bottom is
Yeah.
a place to launch from.
Hmm.
So I guess we got to go to break. Thank you for listening to Transformation Talk Radio. I'm your host of Pure Intuitive Talk. This is Trish Smith. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Trish Smith. You're listening to Pure Intuitive Talk on Transformation Talk Radio. And I have with me my guest, Steve Kumerow. We've been talking about his transformation over the last few years. Also going into some spiritual background, going into mindset, and then also talking about the physical weight loss that you've experienced. And before we went to break, we were talking about rock bottom. Rock bottom. Been there, done that. I've hit rock bottom a few times. I don't know if that's normal for everybody, but it's definitely a place to launch from. Right? And I think there's a lot of power in the opportunity of rock bottom. And I understand that rock bottom looks different for everybody. My rock bottoms have been where I'm suicidal. And your rock bottom was lying in a hospital, possibly on your deathbed, and going, wake up call. And you
Yeah.
did it. You launched.
Thank
You did it. You got to the bottom of that pool. You hit that rock bottom. You dropped your knees. You pushed off your feet and you sprang up and you took advantage of the opportunity that rock bottom provides.
Yeah, I think it's in like nobody really wants to hit that rock bottom. It's not a fun thing.
We don't.
And it's dangerous, and it's a lot of people don't come back from it. But
True.
For me, I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful that I'd been in that situation, because just like anything else, like you can't know the light if you don't know the darkness. You can't, it's the yin and the yang. I've been in that situation, and I never want to be there again. And I will do everything in my power to get myself as far from that situation as I can. So in a way, I don't know if I want to call it PTSD as well or whatever, but anything that makes me feel like I felt back then scares the heck out of me.
Trauma response. Yeah. That's definitely trauma response.
Yeah, I had surgery a few weeks ago because my appendix went, and I had to have my appendix replaced. And just the recovery time from that surgery, which is a very normal thing, a lot of people have to deal with that. But just being able to, not being able to get up and do what I wanted to do, kind of gave me some of those memories that I used to feel, and it scared
that feeling
me.
Came back, yeah.
My wife is so great. She had to be like, "Hey, it's okay. You had a normal surgery. This is normal." And I'm like, "I can't get up and I can't go hiking," and it scared me. It's like, yeah. She had to remind me. It's like, "Hey, you're scarred from this experience you had. You're okay." Yeah. And obviously, I'm fine now. Everything's I'm back to normal. It's great. But just that experience, feeling restricted again, was really scary.
Yeah. And sometimes that little taste, right? That little taste of like, oh, it's a good reminder. So, yeah. So now, you and I had talked about you wanting to take a path of inspiring others and educating others and supporting others on their own journeys. And part of my goal here was to give you a little space. I know it's only an hour, but have that opportunity. I know that there's people out there that are listening that have felt the same way that you felt, and you are in this moment in their living room or in their car, wherever they're listening to, you're providing that. So
thank you.
So thank you for being here, but also, what does that look like for you? What are you thinking? So
I've kind of, in my life, I haven't really ever had direction of what I wanted to do. I've never had a clear career path. I've never had a clear objective of like, hey, this is my passion. This is what I want to do. Well, I've now found my passion, and that's healing. My passion is physically, mentally, and spiritually healing. Like, this started with the weight, and the weight was a symptom of my trauma that I had, and but it's not about losing the weight. Starting to lose the weight is what brought me to be able to learn how to heal. And my goal from all this is I want to be that voice for people. When I felt alone, when I felt nobody understood me, I want to be there to be like, I understand how it feels. When I see people in public that are extremely overweight, that look uncomfortable, that look like they don't want to be there, I feel their pain. I can see it on their face. I feel exactly how they feel when they're walking, and it's like I can tell that they're struggling. I know how that feels, And I don't quite know how I'm gonna go about that yet, but I somehow want to be a person to help with the healing, whether it's weight or whether it's other things that I might be able to help with. I would like to be a voice for people to be like, hey, I know how you feel. I know
Well,
what it
and like
feels
you
like
said, the
to
weight
be
was a
that way.
symptom, and we all have different
Yeah.
symptoms, right? So
Hmm.
maybe someone else's symptom is the alcoholism,
Yeah.
but the path is still the same. Kind of like when we were talking earlier about different religions, it's like there's this core truth at the center of all these different religions, and there's just different language for it, in my personal opinion. Kind of
Hmm.
like you were talking about the weight being a symptom, the alcoholism is a symptom, the drug use is a symptom, but the path is the same, right? So the path is the
Hmm.
mindset that you've chosen, right? The
Hmm.
path is the spiritual investigation that you've chosen. And so
Hmm.
you have the roadmap for multitudes of symptoms because it's that core truth.
Yeah. Yeah. What I've kind of learned, the first your first step in any kind of healing has to be able to be has to be you have to find love for yourself. You have to like something about yourself so that you can have a reason to go forward. You have to feel that love for yourself and to feel that power within yourself, because everyone has the power to make their life whatever they want to be. You have the power to make whatever choices you want, and if your choices have gotten you to a place where you're not happy, you have the power to make choices that will make give you the opposite outcome.
Mhm.
You know, and not until I finally understood my own internal power, and I understood like I am amazing. I am great. I'm kind. I'm smart. I'm loving. I'm hardworking. When you can list these things off about yourself that you love about yourself, that's your starting point, and
Mhm.
that's where you okay. So I deserve healing. I deserve these good things, so I'm going to give them to myself. No one else is going to give them to you.
True that. And
You
I
have to do
agree
it
with your
yourself.
list of things that are good about yourself. And I'm wondering, like, that is that a place for people to start, right? Like maybe if we start looking at the things that other people say about us, because in my life I have people that go, "You're so amazing," right? And I'm
Yeah.
okay. And I always tell them like, "All right," because I feel like that's a really extreme word. But you're an excellent father. You're an amazing husband. You're an intelligent man. You make, good choices for your family. You're loyal. You're consistent. So there's all these beautiful things about you that an outsider might point out. And maybe that's a good place for people to start. Maybe where the
Hmm.
other people are giving you these compliments that you think, okay, maybe
Hmm.
that some of them are true. Maybe they're telling us these reasons, things about us because there's good reason for it, right?
Yeah. Well,
Maybe we could
yeah.
start loving ourselves there, where the things that other people see in us, maybe we could start there and start seeing those things for ourselves.
Yeah, well, there was a time in my life where I would have said none of that's true. You know, I would
Yeah.
have said, no, look at me, I'm this, I'm that. People are just trying to make me feel good. And
Yeah,
there was that time in my life, but you can't heal when you're talking about yourself that way.
that's true. I'm not gonna lie, my negative self-talk can gets a little out of hand sometimes. I
Yeah.
have friends I have friends pointed out. It's like,
Well, then, well, then we're gonna work on positive self-talk from now on.
yeah, I'm still a work in progress.
Aren't we all? Aren't we
Yeah,
all? I know I've got a long way to go, and we're all a work in progress until we die.
same. Yeah. And it's funny because as much growth as I've had and as much healing work as I've done over the last, I don't know, 30 something years, I remember working on myself even as a young person, as a teenager. And um it's interesting because I still feel like I have so far to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's just never ending, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I know we don't have a lot of time left. Is there anything that feels really important for you to say? And also, I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about people reaching out to you? I know when people tune in that your Facebook and Instagram are available. Are you comfortable with people reaching out to you if they have a couple questions or they just want some support or maybe some answers to some questions that they've been wondering and they feel like you could answer for them?
Absolutely. That's one of the main reasons I wanted to do this is because I wanted people to know where I've been, and if they feel comfortable reaching out, I would love to be able to help anybody that's in whatever situation, if it's similar to mine or if it's not or whatever. I've gotten to a point where I'm an open book in my life. I've not always been that way, but we can't fix the problems that we see in ourselves without being honest with ourselves.
True.
Without, I finally had to admit to myself that there are things in my life that are not doing me any good, and nobody wants to do that. I've all my life I grew up. You don't really talk about the negative things. You look the other way. You make a joke about something, and you move on. We have to be honest with ourselves and understand, these things can be fixed and these things need to be fixed, and I have the power to fix them.
Amen.
So, if anybody wants to reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, I'm here for it. I would love that. So
thank you for that.
yeah,
We've got to go soon.
yeah.
Thank you for being here. Is there any last thing you want to throw out at people?
Just want to say, just very simply, it's possible. You're never doomed. If you're still breathing, you can make choices. You can read the book The Slight Edge by Greg Olson.
Okay.
It basically explains how little tiny mundane choices that you make every day in your life accumulate to big snowball changes.
Oh, awesome.
I got a new job, and first thing my boss at my new job recommended is everybody that works there reads this book, and it's a life changer. And that was kind of the basis of hey, I can make, even though these are little tiny changes, and you're not gonna see the results of them right away. You keep doing them, you're gonna see the effects of them.
I love it.
Getting up a little earlier every day, or going for a 5-minute walk every day, or making a healthy breakfast rather than getting cereal. Like, you're not going to see the results in a month, but you're going to see the results. You're going to start seeing them, and they're just going to snowball from there.
It's true. So I feel like we need to have it's possible. Like, we just need to start rocking the shirts now. It's possible.
Heck yeah. Yeah. It's so basically, yeah, you can do it. You can succeed. No matter how down and out you feel, like, there's still a chance, as long as you're still breathing.
Baby steps, right?
Yeah.
Baby steps. Being a little honest here, I have actually gotten myself on that treadmill, to get my cardio going and whatnot. Crying. I've cried walking on that treadmill. Like, I'm just gonna keep doing the actions.
Yeah.
So right, if we can do it, you can do it, right? So thank you, Steve, for being here. We have to get going. Unfortunately, this is a conversation we could have for hours because it's so good and I love talking to you. But thank you, everybody. We do have to go because our time is up. You've been listening to Transformation Talk Radio. I'm your host, Trish Smith of Pure Intuitive Talk. With me today has been Steve Kumerow. You can find him on Facebook. You can find him on Instagram. And you have an invitation to reach out to him if you would like some support. And thank you so much for that. That's so beautiful. It'll make me cry. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Trish. I just want to say you've always been amazing. I've always looked up to you and been inspired by you as well. So thank you so much. Love your family. Love you, Aaron. You rock.
Now I am going to start crying. Thank you, Steve.
No. All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Pure Intuitive Talk with me, Trish Smith, your Pure Intuitive Guide. Come back and join us for encouragement to take responsibility and to connect to your whole being. Remember that every moment is the right moment to choose peace, acceptance, and forgiveness. We all have the courage to look deep within, get real with ourselves, and make upgrades to our ways of interacting with the world. It's been my privilege to share this hour with you. For more information about me, go to pureintuitiveguide.com. That's pureintuitiveguide.com. Thanks again, and we will see you here next time on Transformation Talk Radio.